I'm Kevin Davis, and this is the Catholic Family Podcast, and I'm very honored and really overjoyed today to be joined by Sister Mary Magdalene of the Sisters of St. Thomas Aquinas. And I imagine many of you who are watching this show, and some of you probably who have not seen the show or have seen the Sisters of St. Thomas Aquinas, that they are around on the internet. I'd say primarily, Sister, maybe for the singing. It's probably the best known. I know there are some of the singing videos that have gone viral. They're absolutely wonderful. Singing in the beautiful church down in Brooksville, Florida. Really, really magnificent. I think that's kind of put the sisters on the map, so to say, if that's fair. But the sisters really, one of the things that I know them for, and one of the things I want to learn about today in today's show, is about their school. And part of that is personal. I have a couple of children that are obviously growing up. My daughter is 4. We live in Germany where, well, we're not fans of public school, as I'm sure many people watching this are not as well, but we are not allowed legally to homeschool. It's a big problem. We cannot homeschool in Germany. It is illegal since the times of, well, let's say the 1940s, 1930s. So it's a problem for us. And so we've been looking around for our options. And one of the things we found is the Sisters of St. Thomas Aquinas and the Queen of All Saints School down in Florida. And one of the things that's really interesting is that the sisters do a very broad online schooling. So we're going to talk to Sister Mary Magdalene today about several of these things. But before we get going, Sister, maybe if you can just give us a brief overview of who are you and where are you, I suppose.
Sure. So my name is Sister Mary Magdalene. I am located in Brooksville, Florida at this time, and I run the admissions department at Queen of All Saints and have been doing that for about 12 years. I've been a sister for about 15 years. I started out as a teacher, and I still teach depending on the year if my schedule allows for it. I still teach the AP chemistry.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you, Sister. And so I guess admissions, is that something then? I guess when I hear admissions, I always think, well, that must be like a one time a year type thing, right? I mean, school starts in August, so you're only working in June and July, right, Sister? So what is that something are you looking at people coming in all the time, people asking questions? I mean, I guess what are you doing on a daily basis, I suppose?
Right. On a daily basis, a lot of my time is just spent in one-on-one communication. Choosing school is a laborious task for any parent, obviously, given the state of the education system in the US. Many things are true in name only, and you have to dig very deep to figure out what an institution is actually going to offer in your child's formation. So usually when a parent is interested in our school, we encourage them to explore the program for at least a month if they're on a hard deadline. So if someone inquires now, we do close admissions end of May, and this is the beginning of May. So we would say, give them a month, but it really is better if they're inquiring several months in advance, so that we can make it clear to them what exactly our program is offering and make sure it's going to fit and align. And then also there is a lot of small decisions that have to be made if they realize the school is what they were looking for. You have several options in different areas that you have to figure out before we can onboard a student. And then in addition to that, admissions also covers the onboarding, which is basically prepping the student for the start of the year. It varies per student, but for the online program, for example, you mentioned you're interested in that. They need some tech training during the summer. So we have to prepare their equipment, which is a lot of work because it's completely customized, ship it to them, meet with them to set it up, train them how to use it, test their internet to ensure it is sufficient. And that should really happen well in advance of the year so that if they need to upgrade their internet, for example, they're aware of costs and can look at different options. So admissions does run year round. It's a never-ending to-do list, and I'm looking forward to the day that I have a full-time assistant.
Well, anyone who wants to apply, go over to the website. I should put that online. But it's interesting, Sister. It's one of those things that it's really struck me since I've known about you sisters, is that when I've watched some of the ceremonies that have been live streamed on your YouTube channel and seen you're very traditional sisters. I mean, and really in the best ways. I mean, really traditional. You're singing Palestrina and Victoria, and really the most traditional type things. And then you go on your school website, and it's like you have like the highest tech internet schooling that I've ever seen. It's really incredible, and I love how that kind of connects. Again, you have this very old fashioned, again, old fashioned sounds like a bad word, but I mean really, yeah, traditional. And then you're like, oh yeah, but we are at the top of the line of education, and sister, that's something that kind of blows me away. So we can't get into the details of that. I think it would take too long. But what can you give me a basic idea of what that means for the online schooling? What are the basic top of the end type things that you do?
Sure. Well, I think whether a school is online or not, any good school is a massive undertaking because you are basically taking the place of the parent and forming the child. Bishop Sanborn used to tell us that 70% of the formation happens in the home, and so we are there to support the parent, but we're responsible partly for their formation. So to take on that role is an enormous undertaking. It requires years of research and building, even to launch something that can honestly take that on and do it well. And so I think there's a lot that goes into a school just in general. But as far as the online program, basically our online program goal was to see if we were able to duplicate what was happening on campus, even though the student was remote. And that actually came about because we had, after about 10 years of running the campus in Brooksville, Florida, we were receiving requests from parents, traditional Catholic parents, asking if they could send their children to board in order to attend our school. And at the time, we didn't have the facilities or the staff to offer boarding. So obviously the follow-up question was, well, can you tutor my child online? So it actually started out with one-on-one tutoring upon request, catechism, preparation for the sacraments, and eventually going into actual academics. But very soon we realized we didn't have the staff for that either, at least to do it well. So it then became a question, well, we do have small classes. We have a very small campus. There's about 100 students on campus, and they're actually separated in two locations. The boys' high school is about 10 minutes away from the K-8 and girls' high school. So small classes, and we thought, well, if we bring in 2 or 3 to the classroom and have them just participate live, we could handle that. Each teacher could handle 2 or 3 more students with no detriment to the students on campus or the program in general. So it was a theory that we decided to try, and the first year was somewhat of a disaster, of course. I think a lot of people had that experience during COVID. A lot of schools tried that during COVID to launch an online program, and they went through what we went through. We just went through it a couple years earlier. We launched before COVID, and we realized that to duplicate what's happening on campus, you have to custom build the entire program. There's nothing out there that actually gives you what the child needs. So Mother Mary Teresa, luckily, was very passionate about the program. Father Jacata actually was one of the key figures in encouraging us to pursue it. He visited our first year and watched how it was going, what was working, what wasn't. And thanks to the 40 students who were in that first year, they were kind of like our guinea pigs, unfortunately.
Sure.
We, over the course of that year, we started to figure out how to do it. And luckily at that time, we were very fortunate because COVID had not happened. A lot of companies were still small. A lot of companies that offer things like live streaming, they hadn't boomed yet because of COVID, and they were willing to work with a small organization like ours. For example, Zoom told us we were one of the first schools to ever reach out to them. They had a whole
Wow.
case study on us, and they were so excited, and they were willing to code our Zoom app special for the school, because obviously we didn't want the children having full access to Zoom, being able to call anybody or get a call from anybody. So they offered custom coding so that the only numbers that would work in their app were the teachers' numbers. And we just received so much support and help from the companies we were working with that we realized it's a lot of work, it's a lot of research, it's costly, but it's actually possible. And we're still, I would say we're still building. We actually are planning to launch a program for time zones that can't join during our classes. We can only work with basically California to Saudi Arabia. We have students, most west we have is California, the most east of Florida is Saudi Arabia. After that, they have to be in school all night. So we're actually getting ready to launch a program for them. So it's a constant work in progress, but yes, I would say the goal was to duplicate what was happening on campus. And just over the years, we've realized what that means academically, socially, religiously, and are still trying to make that happen for students globally.
It's so interesting, sister, and I imagine it's. I don't know if it's something you've heard. I don't know if someone would tell you that, to your face as being a sister, but you hear these stories of people, especially generations, maybe the generation of our parents, let's say. So many people have this stories of, we had nuns as our teachers and it was terrible. They hit us with rulers and they were so strict and it was just awful. It's the worst time of our lives. Now I was taught by sisters as well, and really it was some of the best times of my life. And I have two of my sisters are nuns as well, and so obviously I personally have a very good experience with them. But I think it's an interesting thing that I do think times are changing. I do think you do see maybe the next generations are starting to say, this tradition thing's pretty good. These people who have this, their heads on straight and saying, hey, we want to teach your children how to think in actual, give them actual knowledge. We're not going to fill them with all this garbage, etc. And I think a lot of the world is starting to wake up to that. I just can't even imagine what kind of admissions questions you're receiving or requests. That must be fascinating if you're talking about Saudi Arabia. That really makes me wonder. But I should say before we go, sister, I forgot to mention at the beginning that you are under Bishop Selway, who founded the school. I think you mentioned before we went on, and Bishop Selway was consecrated by Bishop Sanborn. So I know many people would know Bishop. I think people would know Bishop Sanborn before they'd probably know Bishop Selway. Bishop Selway is under Bishop Sanborn, who I think, sister, you said is kind of making maybe some of the CEO type decisions for the school. Is that right?
Yes, we do. Bishop Sanborn still is advising us in regards to the school. Bishop Sanborn founded Mary Help of Christians in Michigan, and that was the school that Bishop Selway attended. So we utilized a lot of that groundwork when we founded Queen of All Saints Academy, and still rely on Bishop Sanborn for, I'm sure Bishop Selway relies on him for the direction we need in different decisions as we run into them.
Well, if you have someone like Bishop Sanborn to rely on, I can only imagine that you would. No, absolutely a brilliant person and one of the most brilliant people in the world, I think. And so, sister, it's amazing when you start talking again about the online side. So if people are interested in this from around the world, which I think they are, I am, and I think people around the world are, what exactly is it that you offer? Again, obviously you're offering something traditional. Let's go into the school now. Let's go into the Florida Brooksville location. What is it that you're offering that other schools aren't? And I've heard that you sisters are offering a classic or classical education, or semi-classical education. So maybe if you can maybe answer that second, if you would, and maybe just basically what is it that you do in Brooksville, Florida, I suppose, as a school?
Yes, so the school is classical, and by that, I mean that we pursue the classical goals. Classical education was developed by the Catholic Church, and it was based on the principles of education, the true principles of education. And that's very important because there are so many decisions to be made in regards to the student's time, in regards to the discipline, in regards to the curriculum that's used, the goals you set for them in each class and each year. There's so many decisions to be made, and that shouldn't be guesswork. It needs to be based on a true principle, and classical education provides that. So you have a base that you can build on to the student's advantage. Basically, what you are building on is structured so that you will reach your end goal, which is that the student becomes a saint, obviously, but of course, the whole formation that we offer to give them that opportunity. So I think when people talk about classical, they often are only referring to the stack of books that you're using, but they're referring more so to the structure of the program, obviously the books that you're using, the pedagogy that is applied in the classroom, and all the decisions that are made by leadership must be based on those classical goals to ensure it is a true education, it is a good formation.
And so, sister, what does a day look like? What do you literally what do you start with? And I know when I was in Omaha, I mean, we started it was sometimes optional. No, I guess by the end it was not optional, that we would have to go to mass, and then we would have to attend the rosary, and then you'd have breakfast, and then you start with the first class of the morning. Is it something like that as well with you?
It is, yeah. So the students start showing up at 7:45 on campus. The teachers at 7:30, and the very first activity is attendance, and then everyone proceeds to mass, teachers and students. And the mass starts at 8 o'clock, goes until around 9. Then there's a short breakfast, and our first academic session is actually music, so choir or individual lessons, depending on what area in the conservatory they're in. And at 10 o'clock is the first proper academic class. 10 o'clock is a key time for the online student, because the online students are not required to call into the live stream of the mass every morning, and they're not required to participate in the music conservatory. Those two things are optional for online students. So 10 o'clock is when they have to be there. We take their attendance, and yes.
Interesting. But I'm trying to think of, I don't remember what I think one of my first classes was usually math in the morning, and that was tough. That was, you go to mass, you'd have breakfast, and I'm still kind of, I'm being honest, I was still kind of waking up, and then I go into algebra, and it's like, oh man. So it's an interesting idea that you start with music. That's pretty brilliant. I like that session. I like going in there and say, okay, I'm going to go sing some bass, and then I'll go do algebra. That's a pretty good idea. I like that. Any school teachers out there listening, this is a smart thing. And so, sisters, so then, okay, so 10 o'clock is your first real class, and so when does it end? So are you doing classes? I assume you must have a lunch break. How does that work for someone who's online? I guess it's just the same. It's like, okay, lunch break, go have lunch.
Right. Sure. Yes. So there are about 3 hours of class. The morning classes end at 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then there is an hour break. So during that hour break, the Zoom meetings end, and the online student is free to, of course, go eat a healthy lunch, hopefully play outside, jump in the pool, whatever their exercise is. And they have to be back in their desk and calling into their class, which starts at 2 p.m. And then the afternoon classes extend until 3:30, which is dismissal. There are short breaks between classes. The break can vary anywhere between 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the length of the class that they have. The high school classes are longer than the youngest grades. And during the breaks, the online student is free to leave their desk, but they are usually staying in the meeting, joined to the meeting, and they like to chat with their peers at that time. It's free time. High school students, though, they have to switch classrooms. They have, instead of having one homeroom teacher all day, they have, the high school teachers have to be specialized in their subject, and it's hard to teach more than one high school class. So they have several teachers during the day. So during their breaks, they've also got to be getting to the right classroom, calling into that number. So their schedule is set up like that. They can see the times for each class, the break times as well, and what number to call for each class.
Interesting. So, okay. So online, they're going through Zoom and then plugging in the right number to make sure they're there on time. Interesting. And so is it the same, the schedule is pretty much the same then for first grade through 12th grade, but the younger grades have longer breaks in between. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So the K through 8 is on a daily schedule. They have their core classes every day, and the average class is between 45 minutes to an hour. Kindergarten is exceptional. They have like 20-minute classes, but So they'll have math every day, Monday through Friday, about an hour long. But once you hit high school, in order to allow you to get into elective classes, and especially if you're behind or ahead, to allow you to take more than one class in a single discipline, we utilize block scheduling. So they're having class every other day, but the class is twice as long. So the class is between 80 to 90 minutes. And that is an extra challenge for the high school. We actually have weekly conferences for the freshmen because of that. Because if it's not daily and you're not daily accountable for a single night's homework, then you have to have some time management skills and be pacing yourself. So if you have an assignment on Monday due on Wednesday, you shouldn't be waiting until 10 o'clock Tuesday evening. Probably want to start on Monday evening.
Right.
So yes, the block scheduling is a little bit challenging if they don't have those time management skills and they tend to procrastinate. But it's something we're aware of and we assist them with. And it also does give them the flexibility to choose elective courses, having 2 foreign languages if that's something that they want to pursue.
Interesting. And so is that something then, sister, that what does a class look like? Is that something that it is, are they problem solving, I suppose, during the class? I suppose there's probably a short lecture or lesson and then there's problem solving, or is it something different?
It actually varies per class. So in my chemistry class, we do start out with a short lecture on the topic because they have done the problem solving for homework. Since I teach the AP chemistry, the course load doesn't really allow for you to work through the homework with them during class. It's a lot of material to get through. But in other classes, that might not be the case. In the younger grades, K through 8 especially, it's very important that it's interactive. So our rule of thumb is a required activity, so with a required response, whatever that might be, at least every 7 minutes. And there's also a rule of thumb that you should be changing pace every 10 minutes or so, which means you're doing a different type of exercise. If you don't change pace, students can lose interest. The little ones, they can lose interest, they can get bored. If it's hard for them, they can get stressed. So in the younger grades, there's a variety of activities that the teacher plans in order to reach that lesson's goal by the end of class. Flashcards around the world could be something competitive. It also could just be that they have to respond to a prompt that they're given, either a visual prompt like on a PowerPoint slide or a verbal prompt. In the younger grades, they can't type. So it's very specific there. They use whiteboards. They use an app that allows them to draw on the interactive whiteboard. So it's really different per grade level, per class.
And for homework, sister, what amount of homework are we looking at? I know that, again, going back, it's been a long time since I've been in high school, sister, but it still kind of sends shivers down my spine, the homework. So what are you basically looking at for homework? And I know, again, obviously, I'm sure that's not a standardized thing, but what's an idea?
Sure, it's somewhat standardized actually per grade level. We have on our website, if you go to the For Enrolled Parents tab, we have a homework policy you can access there. And we do try to give the parents what the average is per night for an average student. So if they're not top of the class, not bottom of the class, but average in their class, how much time they're spending on daily homework. In the youngest grades, like kindergarten, it's usually 10 minutes of catechism. It increases incrementally as you move up. By junior high, 7th, 8th grade, it's about an hour and a half. And high school students will have 2 to 3 hours of homework per night. In high school, it increases considerably because they have about an hour of assigned reading every night, in addition to whatever other assignments they're completing. High school can vary more than any other grade level, though, because you can be in standard honors or AP courses, and AP are 30% more work than honors courses, so that affects your homework time as well.
Interesting. And so, sister, you say required reading. What does that mean? Is that literally reading novels, or are they reading from their textbooks? What is that?
Yes. So one of the classical standards is the literature throughout high school. So The typical high school student, provided they're not behind and their schedule allows for it, will take 4 years of literature. And in that class, you are assigned to read different texts. We don't have that many novels because one of the principles we follow is that the text must edify the child morally, as well as have, obviously, literary value. So very often the texts are actually historical. One thing we try to do is link at least 2 of the texts they use every year to whatever era in history they're learning about, whether it's medieval, modern, or ancient. And that usually will increase their interest in their other subjects, which is something, again, that's classical. And there are, I think also just keep in mind, there's a wealth of excellent literature without having to read romantic novels or contemporary novels. So, we don't have any of the classics that you'll typically find on a public school or Christian reading list, simply because there are many other excellent texts that accomplish your goal and without exposing the child to dangerous morals.
And so, yeah, that of course that makes sense. That's right. And so that means are you not reading Shakespeare? You're not reading Dickens, I suppose.
Right. So yes, I don't know if I know, for example, there are several books by Dickens that we do not give the children because he's not a Catholic author, and you can see it in many of his works. Sometimes, though, if the text has a very small amount of material that would be objectionable, we're actually able to get out. So, for example, the classic Christmas Carol by Dickens, that's one of his few that it's not horribly immoral. And we actually, if the book is in the public domain or if we're able to get rights from the author, we don't buy the books and ship them to the student. We print them ourselves. So we have a PDF we've built and we edit it. We basically take out anything that would be objectionable. This is especially important in history. Certain historical topics are not appropriate for certain age levels. It is history, but at certain ages, you shouldn't be proposing certain topics in history and health, even in religion. So they can't understand it, and that usually tends to misunderstanding. So yes, the text, if it's a small edit, we can edit those, and then we have a local press where we print our books and then ship them to the students.
You're making way too much sense, sister. I don't know. I'm not sure if the world can handle that, but no, absolutely. So again, we keep going back to a classical education, sister. Can you give me an idea? And again, we briefly touched about what that means, but what subjects then are you covering? Because I really love how you talk about how you cover literature and kind of history at the same time. You're trying to connect them to like these same subjects, and you're kind of growing the brain. And it was something that. And I don't know if I'm right about this, sister. I looked into classical education a couple of years ago, and if I remember right, you basically start with philosophy or theology and philosophy, and then kind of build from there. Is that right? Am I in the right ballpark with that?
I think so. I'm not the expert on this, but what I can remember from my training, yes, the teachers, as they're going through their training, obtaining their teacher certificate or diploma at the Sisters College, you have to start off with philosophy, psychology, which is kind of a branch off, and theology. And understanding what the soul is, what the mind is, the different faculties a child has, what their will is, what their memory is, what their judgment and reasoning are, what their intellect is. If you don't really have any idea what those are, then it would be very difficult to help the child grow in those faculties. And that's the goal, is the formation of the whole child. And that's even before you get to virtue. It starts, with acquired natural virtue and eventually supernatural virtue. So yes, I think that's right. You start off with the Catholic principles of philosophy, and the decisions you make in your school based off those are the best for the child to reach his goal of that optimal formation for reaching sanctity.
That's interesting, sister. And I think I saw on your website that you also offer rhetoric. Is that right?
Yes. So I think 11th grade, if you're on track, is Rhetoric 1, and which is basically the art of persuasive speech. And that's preceded by imitation of the classic authors. So basically learning how to be a good writer. It's not creative writing. That's something that I found interesting, is that creative writing doesn't actually accomplish the classical goal in composition. And it's something that was put in place, I believe, in the 1950s, 1960s, and they actually dumped advanced grammar to make room for it. And that data shows that was a complete failure. So it's actually imitative writing and studying the mechanics and how to put those in place, followed by a year of humanities, which is a study of style. And then finally, rhetoric, which is persuasive speech, learning the different types of argument. And eventually that leads to the next year debate.
Interesting. That's so fascinating for me, sister. I think that's something that, again, it sounds like so 100 years ago, but I love it. I mean, I think that's, and I think it's when I was homeschooled growing up until I was 15, and my mom used to go back. I don't know where she found them. I guess in the library somewhere. She found these books from 100 to 150 years ago for like our spelling tests, and she'd give us these. We'd learn from these spelling books from, I don't know, 1880, something like that, somewhere around that time, and it was incredible that the level of vocabulary they had. It's so beyond what we know now, what we use now in today's language. It's mind boggling. And it's something too that we see in our everyday speech, right? If you go and read, I don't know, even Dickens, go read Dickens or Shakespeare. Okay, Shakespeare's too far, but you can see that there's just words that we never use anymore. And I think it's something we've really lost. And so to be able to study something like that, or a rhetoric, something that we're losing every day, children, especially adults too, who are so involved with social media all the time. They spend most of their time interacting with people over the phones, and they're using the shortest form possible, and that they forget how to actually talk or argue, even, or to debate. And I think that's again, it makes too much sense, sister. I think that's a beautiful thing. It's a big reason why I wanted to promote the school, because I think this is, if we want to quote unquote win, win the battle against evil, of course, that's the ultimate goal. Well, we certainly better start with our children, right? And as a father of soon to be 3 children, it's like, this is what we have to do. And I think that's, where else are you going to do it? If not with sisters who are teaching rhetoric in Latin. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Even Latin, sister. I mean, I don't know if you learned Latin in school, sister. I did a little bit, unfortunately, not as much as I should have, but it's an amazing thing now that I've come to Germany and had to learn German, how much Latin actually formed a basis for learning just any other language. It's neat how that works, right? You learn these basic in school, you learn these basic building blocks, and then wow, it's amazing. Later in life, it actually works for something. it's
No,
beautiful.
It is amazing, and that's one thing that parents ask a lot. They'll ask, what's the utility of this class? Because if they can't immediately equate it to basically U.S. currency, how much money will this make me in the future?
Sure.
It's kind of hard for them to understand what the goal of it is. But once you understand what you're trying to do in educating a child, and you realize it's not career training proper, it basically gives them the tools for that and everything else, sanctity. Then it makes a lot more sense once you realize your child needs to be formed, and there is a correct way to do it, and that's what a classical education is trying to help with. It's interesting you said that your mother found some spelling lists from the 1800s. We did, well, I wasn't around at that time. I wasn't a sister, but I understand the sisters did the same thing. After running the school for a few years, they quickly realized that there was much that needed studied and revised. Basically, there isn't a standard good curriculum available to buy off the market, and the teacher training needed improved. And I understand Mother Mary Teresa traveled to several different places, but one of them, she went to St. Louis, Missouri, the archives of the Society of the Sacred Heart, founded by St. Madeleine Sophie Barrett. And she found from many different things that kind of confirmed or explained some of the decisions that we were trying to come to at that time. And it is consoling to know that it was done well at one time. It's kind of been torn down over the past half a century and has to kind of be rebuilt within institutions. But yes, it was done well, and there's much you can find on it.
Well, and sister, there's a long way we could go down to talking about, the loss of education. I tend to believe that it was a purposeful thing done by communist infiltration, but we don't need to go down that road. It seems purposeful. There was definitely, if it wasn't purposeful, then it definitely was neglected. Let's say that. I mean, as you say, sister, and we see that today. We see it throughout the world, but especially in America. I think you see the lack of proper education, and I think that COVID really was something to open people's eyes to say, because a lot of people got to see, because their children had to stay home, they got to see these online courses, and they're like, what on earth are my children learning? And it really blew their minds, and they couldn't believe it. And a lot of it, obviously, a lot of it that we hear of in the news is straight up garbage, right? It's filth. It's absolute trash. But I think also some of it is just like, okay, the teachers aren't very good, and the education is just not that high. I mean, the things that they're reading in school are just not very high quality. And I think that's again something that, why are we settling for that, sister? And I think that's what, and I think again the beauty of it is, I think the world slowly is waking up to that. I truly hope so. At least there are people who are saying, okay, this isn't enough. We can't just settle for underwhelming education for our children. And so I hope and pray that people watch the show and say, hey, okay, maybe we have an option here. And I know, sister, again, you said that it's not for everyone, and I'm sure it's not. I mean, I think it sounds like a hard education, and I'm sure it is. And one of the critiques that I've heard, and I'm sure you have as well, sister, is that it's very strict. And I've heard this from really every side. And it's very strict. It's too strict. It's not something I can handle. I mean, what would you say to that, sister?
As far as the campus, there are, for campus students, some additional rules they have to follow, which are very strict. And that's just based on our experience. We've seen that peer influence is very strong on campus. And what we've experienced over the past 20 years is that if you have one rotten apple, it doesn't turn green, it rots everything around it. So we do have certain rules in place to remove the possibility of a child being on campus who is a bad influence to his peers through his access to things at home, like being able to browse the internet freely, being able to watch TV freely. The pagan world is a very bad influence on the child. And for campus students, we do require that the parents take certain steps at home to keep the school a safe environment. And I understand that doesn't work for every family for different reasons. It might just be because they found our school late and their child isn't ready to give up his iPhone and YouTube or whatever, or social media. They're addicted to it, and the parent's not in a position where they have, they're too old for them to just take it from them. I've seen that happen many times, and the parent has good intentions. They want to do what's right, but they don't really have that power anymore. And other times it's just the dynamic at home. Sometimes parents are in the middle of figuring out a move, or they're dealing with a job crisis, and they don't have the structure to onboard on a school at that time. So it's different for every family. I think every family wants the best education they can get for their child, and they do their best. I'm especially edified by homeschool mothers. I don't know how they do it, but I've seen homeschool mothers who have done an excellent job. Sometimes it's rare, but sometimes we get a high school transfer who is very well educated in a large family of homeschool children. And obviously you have the other side of the coin where it wasn't successful, but no, homeschool mothers, prioritizing that their morals have to come first. I really admire that, and I encourage them to persevere in that effort of keeping them out of public school. But yes, if it's something that the family is interested in and ready for, we'd be happy to help them figure out if it is a good option for each individual child. So yes, on campus there are some some difficult rules that apply at home, actually, as far as trying to keep the peer influence a good influence. Online, sometimes when parents or students will say it's strict, they're usually referring to the academic side, because peer influence is not such a big concern for online students because of the management on their devices. They can't privately communicate with each other. It's all within a public forum that's monitored by teachers. So if a student were to say, oh, I love this song, and it was, heavy metal rock, they would be corrected for that, and told why that's not something that they should be listening to. So there isn't so much of a danger in that respect. So some of the rules are not as broad for the online students. They're more centered. And so I think the strictness for online students, if someone's talking about that, it would have to be academic. And I think that's completely relative. It depends what you've had before. Is it more or less work? Are you more or less accountable than what you're used to? And if it's more, we often translate that as strict. If it's less, it's not strict. So it's different for every student. On standardized testing, we usually rank an 8 out of 10. So definitely we are more work than the average public school, which ranks around middle 5. But we're also not the most difficult academically. So, but the academics are a tool really in the formation of the child. They're not the end goal. And with that in mind, I think parents can be assured that what we are here to do is to teach the child virtue and develop their faculties. If they're not scoring straight A's, that may not be an issue. They may not be capable of straight A's. So it's not so much the scores that are important, but more so that the child is getting all the support they need to become the best that they can.
Yeah, wonderful, sister. It's really interesting you bring up the cell phones and TV shows and whatnot. I have to plug a show that's coming up on the podcast with a doctor who did his PhD thesis on the effects of dopamine on the mind and pretty much how screens affect your brain and especially for children. We're going to publish that soon. Hopefully, hopefully record that next week. And I think it's something that I'm very interested in. And also very supportive of people who want to keep children away from screens as much as possible. It just, again, it's one of these crazy things in society, sister, that we're insane. We are an insane society. I mean, there's so many things that we do that is purely damaging to our children. And as you said, sister, everyone loves their children. I mean, that's a very rare case when someone, doesn't want the best. But there's just some blocks in the way that just their cognitive dissonance that we just let get in the way that we do these terrible decisions like giving our children cell phones. And I think that we need to push that more and let people understand how damaging that is. And so I love it when you're just saying, nope. I think we need more of that, sister. I think we need more of that in society. I mean, I know it's strict. I know it's hard. And I mean, I'm the same way. I'm going for weeks now without a cell phone, and it's hard, and I don't like it. But it's something we need to do for ourselves. Even just say enough. This has got to stop. We have to draw a line, and it's something we definitely have to do for our children. So I definitely appreciate that, and it's something that I appreciate that you do with your school. Because if I was going to send my children to school, let's just say I moved to Brooksville, hypothetically, and I'm sending my children there, I would feel better knowing that the other children there don't have cell phones. I just would. Sister, I've passed people, children, let's say, I don't know, maybe 5th or 6th grade children at a train station one time, a group of 5th grade boys. And they, one of the boys had a phone and they were looking up terrible, terrible videos. One boy with a phone and a group of 5 or 6 kids. And it's just like, boom. Innocence lost, gone. And that's just the thing that, again, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, sister, but just I think this is such an important thing that we just cannot possibly appreciate enough. We cannot let that happen to these children. So I appreciate that you're just drawing that line and kind of switching topics though, sister, because I think I'm totally with you on that whole subject. And I hope people understand that as well. That and I appreciate that, sometimes classes are hard. I wasn't school wasn't my favorite either. So sometimes if it's hard, I would probably have called it strict as well. But who writes the curriculum? Where does your curriculum come from?
Sure, A lot of it, originally we did start out with a lot of the curriculum that came from Mary Help of Christians, Lepanto Press, a lot of those homeschool classics that are somewhat traditional. But yes, over time we have pulled from different sources, and it's pretty much custom built. Sister Mary Frances leads that team. Jackie Sonara is a huge help in that area. And then every single, at least right now, every single homeroom teacher has surveys they have to fill out and reporting on the success of this, success of that. So it's kind of a whole school effort in that regards to keep the curriculum updated, performing, well, and always improving it. You can always improve by, changing an assignment so it can be somewhat auto-graded, save the teacher time. There's always different improvements that can be made. And so it's still an ongoing process. But yes, I would say Sister Mary Frances and Mother Mary Teresa have kind of led that and are responsible for a lot of the custom building. I think the reason we have to custom build so much of it is because we do have two standards for the curriculum. One, of course, is the Catholic standard, which is the more important, which is that the content must be edifying and safe for the student. So that comes first. But we also have a goal that we are actually offering the high quality of education. We believe that, education shouldn't stunt your natural faculties, even it should enhance them very much so. A Catholic child should have the best education there is. And we take that very seriously. It's not the ultimate goal, obviously, but we expect to be performing as well as any other high school in Florida, or in the United States, and both on standardized testing, whatever it is, competitions, results from our graduates, what they're able to accomplish. So because we have that secondary goal, there's very little curricula that has both. Usually if it's traditional and Catholic and safe, unfortunately it's somewhat outdated, and because it's self-paced, it's meant for being self-taught at home, it has a lower standard because obviously a child can't go as far when he is on his own without a teacher helping him through it. So it tends to be at a lower standard. So that's why we have to custom build to try to keep that Catholic safe standard, but while also offering high quality that we want to be able to offer to students, or at least give them the opportunity to achieve that. When I was in high school, Queen of All Saints had only been around for about 2 or 3 years, I think. And I remembering wanting to go further in foreign language and not being able to. And that's not a big deal, it's not the ultimate goal, but we would like to be able to offer that. So now we can. So it's an ongoing, development to make sure we can give them the best that there is.
No, that's wonderful, sister. And again, it's something that Pope Pius XII, said that we if the young people of the world, the young Catholics of the world don't take in the high positions, of the world, or, try to lead the world in ways even of the world, then who will? And I think that's a really important lesson we also want to create intelligent, successful people, of course, right? And that's again, because if we don't, well, look at the world around us, I suppose, maybe that's part of what happened. But I think that is a very valuable thing that in education is extremely valuable. And I think that we see it in the world around us. That is absolutely certain, sister. And I think it's again, it's a wonderful option to have. And I think it's a blessing that we have religious, a few, there aren't that many little groups around the world, I suppose, who are doing their best to provide that, provide an education and especially provide guidance for souls. And sister, I think that's something that I hope everyone will appreciate from what you sisters all do at the the Queen of All Saints School, and also that they will pray for the Sisters of St. Thomas Aquinas, for the bishops as well. If anyone has any questions for the sisters, I think is it best to reach you, sister, at the Sisters of Aquinas, or better at the Queen of All Saints? I suppose probably the Queen of All Saints for schooling questions. Is that right?
Yes, best is Queen of All Saints of qasonline.org, and yes, email or phone. There's also an inquiry form you can fill out on our website, but word of warning, if you fill that out, you're going to start to get our newsletter. You automatically get subscribed. So,
Got it. Perfect. No, that's good. And sister, if anyone has a question, maybe perhaps someone sees this video and they think, oh, maybe the life, of being a sister, being a religious is interesting, or maybe I have questions. Is that also, again, something that they would go to the Sisters of Aquinas.org, and maybe, is there an email address there as well, or?
There is, and there's actually there's a vocation inquiry form you can fill out, and if you take the time to fill it out, you will get a follow-up call from the vocations director. So you will get a response on that. There is actually a page on our website on the school website, that also directs you to that.
Okay.
But,
and will they get a newsletter if they sign up, if they do an inquiry on that one, sister?
Actually, I don't think that one. I should do that though.
You should. That would be good. You got to keep pumping out the marketing there, sister. No, I appreciate it, sister. It's been really, really a pleasure to have you on. And I hope I asked all the questions I had. Probably not. I'll probably have to ask you on sometime again to answer all the questions. But you did a wonderful job. I really appreciate it. And again, I really deeply appreciate what you sisters do, what all the religious do, to try to teach our children, because again, there's not as parents, what is our job? Our job is to get ourselves to heaven and bring our children there as well. That's the primary job. And for goodness sake, I know firsthand experience, if you have sisters there to help you, it will at least help you get farther through life. I'm not there yet. I've got a long way to go, but I can tell you that the influence that sisters have had on my life has been absolutely incredible. It continues to be, and I cannot recommend it enough, that if you can have teaching sisters, religious, priests, bishops, for goodness sake, do it. Just do it. Find a way. I mean, if it works, again, I know everyone has circumstances, but if you can, you just won't regret it. I absolutely know that, again, from firsthand experience. Sister Mary Magdalene, thank you very much again for coming on. Everyone, please go and support the sisters. Support the school, QASonline.org. Support the sisters, sistersofaquinas.org. And sister, well, perhaps until next time, I guess I will go and check out my newsletter. I imagine I must have one here, because I also did fill out that formula. I know I get them. I don't know, is it monthly? Probably. I think it's or is it weekly? Yeah. I actually don't even know. I know I see them for sure. I read them. I just don't know how often they are. But Sister Mary Magdalene, thank you very much. And until next time, perhaps, if not, then in heaven. Until then, may we meet. God bless you.
Thank you. God bless.